the craftiest, and whosoever at present trafficketh for power. We are not the first men, and have nevertheless to stand for them. Of this imposture have we at last become weary and disgusted. From the rabble have we gone out of the way, from all those bawlers and scribe blowflies, from the traitor stench, the ambition fidgeting, the bad breath, fie, to live among the rabble. Fie, to stand for the first men among the rabble. Ah, loathing, loathing, loathing! What doth it now matter about us kings?
Thine old sickness seizeth thee, said here the king on the left. Thy loathing seizeth thee, my poor brother. Thou knowest, however, that some one heareth us. Immediately thereupon, Zarathustra, who had opened ears and eyes to this talk, rose from his hiding-place, advanced towards the kings, and thus began. He who hearketh unto you, he who gladly hearkeneth unto you, is called Zarathustra. I am Zarathustra, who once said, What doth it now matter about kings? Forgive me. I rejoiced when ye said to each other, What doth it matter about us kings? Here, however, is my domain and jurisdiction. What may ye be seeking in my domain? Perhaps, however, ye have found on your way what I seek, namely, the higher man. When the kings heard this, they beat upon their breasts and said with one voice,
We are recognized. With the sword of thine utterance severest thou the thickest darkness of our hearts. Thou hast discovered our distresses, for lo, we are on our way to find the higher man, the man that is higher than we. Although we are kings, to him do we convey this ass. For the highest man shall also be the highest lord on earth. There is no sorer misfortune in all human destiny than when the mighty of the earth are not also the first men. Then everything becometh false and distorted and monstrous. Then when they are even the last men, and more beast than man, then riseth and riseth the populace in honour. And at last saith even the populace virtue, Lo, I alone am virtue.
What have I just heard? Answered Zarathustra. What wisdom in kings! I am enchanted, and verily, I have already promptings to make a rhyme thereon, even if it should happen to be a rhyme not suited for everyone's ears. I am learned long ago to have consideration for long ears. Well then, well now. Here, however, it happened that the ass also found utterance. It said distinctly, and with malevolence, Yee-haw! 'Twas once, methinks, year 1 of our blessed Lord, drunk without wine, the Sibyl thus deplored, How ill things go, decline, decline, nary sank the world so low. Rome now hath turned harlot, and harlot stew, Rome Caesar, a beast, and God hath turned Jew. With those rhymes of Zarathustra the kings were delighted. The king on the right, however, said,
O Zarathustra, how well it was that we set out to see thee! For thine enemies showed us thy likeness in their mirror. There lookest thou with the grimace of a devil, and sneeringly, so that we were afraid of thee. But what good did it do? Always didst thou prick us anew in heart and ear with thy sayings. Then did we say at last, What doth it matter how he look? We must hear him, him who teacheth. Ye shall love peace as a means to new wars, and the short peace more than the long. No one ever spake such warlike words. What is good? To be brave is good. It is the good war that halloweth every cause. O Zarathustra, our fathers, blood stirred in our veins at such words. It was like the voice of spring to old wine casks. When the swords ran among one another like red-spotted serpents, then did our fathers become fond of life. The sun of every peace seemed to them languid and lukewarm. The long peace, however, made them ashamed. How they sighed, our fathers, when they saw on the wall brightly furbished, dried-up swords. Like those they thirsted for war, for a sword thirsted to drink blood, and sparkleth with desire. When the kings thus discoursed, and talked eagerly of the happiness of their fathers, there came upon Zarathustra no little desire to mock at their eagerness.
For evidently they were very peaceable kings, whom he saw before him, kings with old and refined features, but he restrained himself. "Well," said he, "thither leadeth the way. There lieth the cave of Zarathustra, and this day is to have a long evening. At present, however, a cry of distress calleth me hastily away from you. It will honor my cave if kings want to sit and wait in it, but, to be sure, ye will have to wait long. Well, what of that? Where doth one at present learn better to wait than at courts, and the whole virtue of kings that hath remained unto them? It is not called today ability to wait." Thus spake Zarathustra. 64. The Leech. And Zarathustra went thoughtfully on, further and lower down, through forests and past moory bottoms, as it happeneth. However, to every one who meditateth upon hard matters, he trod thereby unawares upon a man, and lo, there spurted into his face all at once a cry of pain, and 2 curses, and 20 bad invectives, so that in his fright he raised his stick, and also struck the trodden one. Immediately afterwards, however, he regained his composure, and his heart laughed at the folly he had just committed. "Pardon me," said he to the trodden one, who had got up enraged, and had seated himself. "Pardon me, and hear first of all a parable. As a wanderer, who dreameth of remote things on a lonesome highway, runneth unawares against a sleeping dog, a dog which lieth in the sun. As both of them then start up, and snap at each other, like deadly enemies, these 2 beings mortally frightened. So did it happen unto us. And yet, how little was lacking for them to caress each other, that dog and that lonesome one. Are they not both lonesome ones?" "Whoever thou art," said the trodden one, still in rage, "thou treadest also too nigh me with thy parable, and not only with thy foot. Lo, am I then a dog?" And thereupon the sitting one got up and pulled his naked arm out of the swamp. For at first he had lain outstretched on the ground, hidden and indiscernible, like those who lie in wait for swamp game. "But whatever art thou about?" called out Zarathustra in alarm, for he saw a deal of blood streaming over the naked arm. "What hath hurt thee? Hath an evil beast bit thee, thou unfortunate one?" The bleeding one laughed, still angry. "What matter it to thee?" said he, and was about to go on. "Here I am at home, and in my province. Let him question me whoever will. To a dolt, however, I shall hardly answer." "Thou art mistaken," said Zarathustra sympathetically, and held him fast. "Thou art mistaken. Here thou art not at home, but in my domain, and therein shall no one receive any hurt. Call me, however, what thou wilt. I am who I must be. I call myself Zarathustra. Well, up thither is the way to Zarathustra's cave. It is not far. Wilt thou not attend to thy wounds at my home? It hath gone badly with thee, thou unfortunate one, in this life. First a beast bit thee, and then a man trod upon thee. When, however, the trodden one had heard the name of Zarathustra, he was transformed. "What happened upon me?" he exclaimed. "Who preoccupieth me so much in this life as this one man, namely Zarathustra? And that one animal that liveth on blood, the leech? For the sake of the leech did I lie here by this swamp like a fisher, and already had mine outstretched arm been bitten 10 times, when there bitteth a still finer leech at my blood, Zarathustra himself. O happiness, O miracle, praise be this day which enticed me into the swamp. Praise be the best, the liveliest cupping glass that at present liveth. Praised be the great conscience leech, Zarathustra." Thus spake the trodden one, and Zarathustra rejoiced at his words, and their refined reverential style. "Who art thou?" asked he, and gave him his hand. "There is much to clear up and elucidate between us, but already methinks pure clear day is dawning." "I am the spiritually conscientious one," answered he who was asked, "and in matters of the spirit it is difficult for anyone to take it more rigorously, more restrictedly, and more severely than I, except him from whom I learnt it, Zarathustra himself. Better know nothing than have known many things. Better be a fool on one's own account than a sage on the other people's approbation. I go to the basis. What matter if it be great or small, if be cold swamp or sky? A handbreadth of basis is enough for me, if it be actually basis and ground. A handbreadth of basis thereon can one stand. In the true knowing knowledge there is nothing great and nothing small. Then thou art perhaps an expert on the leech? Asked Zarathustra, and thou investigatest the leech to its ultimate basis, thou conscientious one? Oh, Zarathustra, answered the trodden one, that would be something immense. How could I presume to do so? That, however, of which I am master and knower, is the brains of the leech. That is my world. And it is also a world, forgive it, however, that my pride here findeth expression. For here I have not mine equal, therefore said I, here am I at home. How long have I investigated this one thing, the brain of the leech, so that here the slippery truth might no longer slip from me? Here is my domain. For the sake of this did I cast everything else aside. For the sake of this did everything else become indifferent to me. And close behind my knowledge lieth my black ignorance. My spiritual consciousness requireth from me that it should be so. That I should know one thing, and not know all else. They are a loathing unto me, all the semi-spiritual, all the hazy, hovering and visionary. Where mine honesty seetheth, there I am blind, and want also to be blind. Where I want to know, however, there want I also to be honest, namely, severe, rigorous, restricted, cruel, and inexorable. Because thou once saidest, O Zarathustra, spirit is life which itself cutteth into life. That led and allured me to thy doctrine, and verily, with mine own blood have I increased my own knowledge. As the evidence indicateth, broke in Zarathustra, for still was the blood flowing down on the naked arm of the conscientious one, for there had 10 leeches bitten into it. O thou strange fellow, how much doth this very evidence teach me, namely, thou thyself, and not all, perhaps, might I pour into thy rigorous ear. Well then, we part here, but I would fain find thee again. Up thither is the way to my cave. Tonight shalt thou there be my welcome guest. Fain would I also make amends to thy body, for Zarathustra treading upon thee with his feet. I think about that just now. However, a cry of distress calleth me hastily away from thee. Thus spake Zarathustra. 65. The Magician. When, however, Zarathustra had gone round a rock, then saw he, on the same path, not far below him, a man who threw his limbs about like a maniac, and at last tumbled to the ground on his belly. Halt, said then Zarathustra to his heart. He, there, must surely be the higher man. From him came that dreadful cry of distress. I will see if I can help him. When, however, he ran to the spot where the man lay on the ground, he found a trembling old man with fixed eyes, and in spite of all Zarathustra's efforts to lift him and set him again on his feet, it was all in vain. The unfortunate one, also, did not seem to notice that someone was beside him. On the contrary, he continually looked around with moving gestures, like one forsaken and isolated from all the world. At last, however, after much trembling and convulsion and curling himself up, he began to lament thus. Who warmeth me? Who loveth me still? Give ardent fingers, give heartening charcoal warmers, prone, outstretched, trembling like him, half dead and cold, whose feet one warmeth, and shaken, by unfamiliar fevers, shivering with sharpened, icy cold frost arrows. By thee pursued my fancy, ineffable, recondite, sore frightening. Thou huntsman, hide the cloud banks, now lightning struck by thee, thou mocking eye that me in darkness watcheth. Thus do I lie, bend myself, twist myself, convulsed with all eternal torture, and smitten by thee, cruelest huntsman, thou unfamiliar god. Smite deeper, smite yet once more, pierce through and rend my heart. What meaneth this torture with dull indented arrows? Why look'st thou hither, of human pain not weary, with mischief-loving, godly flash glances? Not murder wilt thou, but torture, torture. For why me torture, thou mischief-loving, unfamiliar god? Ha ha! Thou stealest nigh in midnight's gloomy hour. What wilt thou? Speak! Thou crowdest me possessed. Ha! Now far too closely. Thou hear'st me breathing. Thou o'erhear'st my heart. Thou ever jealous one. Of what, pray, ever jealous? Off, off! For why the ladder? Wouldst thou get in? To heart in clamber, to mine own secretest conceptions in clamber? Shameless one, thou unknown one, thief! What seekest thou by thy stealing? What seekest thou by thy hearkening? What seekest thou by thy torturing? Thou torturer, thou hangman god! Or shall I, as the mastiffs do, roll me before thee, and cringing, enraptured, frantical, my tail friendly waggle? In vain. Goad further, cruelest goader. No dog, thy game just am I. Cruelest huntsman, thy proudest of captives. Thou robber, hind the cloud banks. Speak finally, thou lightning-veiled one, thou unknown one, speak! What wilt thou, highway ambusher, from me? What wilt thou, unfamiliar god? What? Ransom gold? How much of ransom gold? Solicit much that biddeth my pride, and be concise that biddeth mine other pride. Ha ha! Me wantest thou, me entire, and torturest me. Fool that thou art, dead torturest quite my pride. Give love to me, who warmeth me still, who loveth me still. Give ardent fingers, give heartening charcoal warmers, give me the lonesomest, the ice, sevenfold frozen ice, for very enemies, for foes doth make one thirst. Give, yield to me, cruelest foe, thyself. Away! There fled he surely, my final, only comrade, my greatest foe, mine unfamiliar, my hangman god. Nay, come thou back, with all of thy great tortures, to me the last of lonesome ones. Oh, come thou back! All my hot tears and streamlets trickle their course to thee, and all my final hearty fervour upgloweth to thee. Oh, come thou back, mine unfamiliar god, my pain, my final bliss.
Here, however, Zarathustra could no longer restrain himself. He took his staff and struck the wailer with all his might. "Stop this!" cried he to him with wrathful laughter. "Stop this, thou stage player, thou false coiner, thou liar from the very heart. I know thee well. I will soon make warm legs to thee, thou evil magician. I know well how to make it hot for such as thou."
"Leave off,"
said the old man, and sprang up from the ground.
"Strike me no more, O Zarathustra. I did it only for amusement. That kind of thing belongeth to mine art. Thee thyself I wanted to put to the proof when I gave this performance, and verily thou hast well detected me. But thou thyself hast given me no small proof of thyself. Thou art hard, thou wise Zarathustra. Hard strikest thou with thy truths, thy cudgel forceth from me this truth. Flatter not, answered Zarathustra, still excited and frowning. Thou stage player from the heart, thou art false. Why speakest thou of truth? Thou peacock of peacocks, thou sea of vanity, what didst thou represent before me, thou evil magician? Whom was I meant to believe in when thou wieldest in such wise? The penitent in spirit, said the old man. It was him I represented. Thou thyself once devisedst this expression. The poet and the magician who at last turneth his spirit against himself, the transformed one who freezeth to death by his bad science and conscience. And just acknowledge it. It was long, O Zarathustra, before thou discoverest my trick and lie. Thou believedst in my distress when thou heldest my hand with both thy hands. I heard thee lament. We have loved him too little, because I so far deceived thee. My wickedness rejoiced in me. Thou mayest have deceived subtler ones than I, said Zarathustra sternly. I am not on my guard against deceivers. I have to be without precaution. So willeth my lot. Thou, however, must deceive. So far do I know thee. Thou must ever be equivocal, trivical, quadrivical, and quinquivocal. Even what thou hast now confessed is not nearly true enough, nor false enough for me. Thou bad false coiner, how couldst thou do otherwise? Thy very malady wouldst thou whitewash if thou showed thyself naked to thy physician. Thus did thou whitewash thy lie before me when thou saidst, I did so only for amusement. There was also seriousness therein. Thou art something of a penitent in spirit. I divine thee well. Thou hast become the enchanter of all the world. But for thyself, thou hast no lie or artifice left. Thou art disenchanted to thyself. Thou hast reaped disgust as thy one truth. No word in thee is any longer genuine, but thy mouth is so. That is to say, the disgust that cleaveth unto thy mouth. Who art thou at all? Cried here the old magician with defiant voice. Who dareth to speak thus unto me? The greatest man now living. And a green flash shot from his eye at Zarathustra, but immediately after he changed, and said sadly, O Zarathustra, I am weary of it. I am disgusted with mine arts. I am not great. Why do I dissemble? But thou knowest it well. I sought for greatness. A great man I wanted to appear, and persuaded many. But the lie hath been beyond my power. On it do I collapse. O Zarathustra, everything is a lie in me, but that I collapse, this, my collapsing, is genuine. It honoureth thee, said Zarathustra gloomily, looking down with sidelong glance. It honoureth thee that thou soughtest for greatness, but it betrayeth thee also. Thou art not great. Thou bad old magician, that is the best and the honest thing I honour in thee, that thou hast become weary of thyself, and hast expressed it. I am not great. Therein do I honour thee as a penitent in spirit, and although only for the twinkling of an eye, in that one moment wast thou genuine. But tell me, what seekest thou here in my forests and rocks? And if thou hast put thyself in my way, what proof of me wouldst thou have? Wherein didst thou put me to the test? Thus spake Zarathustra, and his eyes sparkled. But the old magician kept silent for a while. Then he said, Did I put thee to the test? I seek only. Oh, Zarathustra, I seek a genuine one, a right one, a simple one, an unequivocal one. A man of perfect honesty, a vessel of wisdom, a saint of knowledge, a great man. Knowest thou it not, O Zarathustra?
I seek Zarathustra.
And here there arose a long silence between them. Zarathustra, however, became profoundly absorbed in thought, so that he shut his eyes. But afterwards, coming back to the situation, he grasped the hand of the magician and said, full of politeness and policy, "Well, up thither leadeth the way. There is the cave of Zarathustra. In it mayest thou seek him whom thou wouldst fain find. And ask counsel of mine animals, mine eagle, and my serpent. They shall help thee to seek. My cave, however, is large. I myself, to be sure, I have as yet seen no great man. That which is great, the acutest eye is at present insensible to it. It is the kingdom of the populace. Many a one have I found who stretched and inflated himself, and the people cried, 'Behold the great man!' But what good do all bellows do? The wind cometh out at last. At last bursteth the fog, which hath inflated itself too long. Then cometh out the wind, to prick a swollen one in the belly. I call good pastime. Hear that, ye boys. Our today is of the populace, who still knoweth what is great and what is small. Who could there seek successfully for greatness? A fool only. It succeedeth with fools. Thou seekest for great men, thou strange fool, who taught that to thee. Is today the time for it? O thou bad seeker, why dost thou tempt me? Thus spake Zarathustra, comforted in his heart, and went laughing on his way. 66. Out of service. Not long, however, after Zarathustra had freed himself from the magician, he again saw a person sitting beside the path which he followed, namely a tall, black man, with a haggard, pale countenance. This man grieved him exceedingly. "Alas," said he to his heart, "there sitteth disguised affliction. Methinketh he is of the type of the priests. What do they want in my domain? What hardly have I escaped from that magician, and must another necromancer again run across my path? Some sorcerer with laying on of hands, some sombre wonder-worker by the grace of God, some anointed world-maligner, whom may the devil take. But the devil is never at the place which would be his right place. He always cometh too late, that cursed dwarf and club-foot." Thus cursed Zarathustra impatiently in his heart, and considered how with averted look he might slip past the black man. But behold, it came about otherwise, for at the same moment had the sitting one already perceived him, and not unlike one whom an unexpected happiness overtaketh. He sprang to his feet, and went straight towards Zarathustra. "Whoever thou art, thou traveller," said he, "help a strayed one, a seeker, an old man, who may here easily come to grief. The world here is strange to me, and remote. Wild beasts also did I hear howling, and he could have given me protection. He is himself no more. I was seeking the pious man, a saint and an anchorite, who alone in his forest had not yet heard of what all the world knoweth at present." "What doth all the world know at present?" asked Zarathustra. "Perhaps that the old God no longer liveth, in whom all the world once believed?" "Thou sayest it," answered the old man sorrowfully, "and I served that old God until his last hour. Now, however, am I out of service, without master, and yet not free. Likewise am I no longer merry even for an hour, except it be in recollections. Therefore did I ascend into these mountains, that I might finally have a festival for myself once more, as becometh an old pope and church father, for know it, that I am the last pope, a festival of pious recollections and divine services. Now, however, is he himself dead, the most pious of men, the saint in the forest, who praised his God constantly with singing and mumbling.
He himself found I no longer when I found his cot, but 2 wolves found I therein, which howled on account of his death, for all animals loved him. Then did I haste away, had I thus come in vain into these forests and mountains? Then did my heart determine that I should seek another, the most pious of those who believed not in God. My heart determined that I should seek Zarathustra.
Thus spake the hoary man, and gazed with keen eyes at him who stood before him. Zarathustra, however, seized the hand of the old pope and regarded it a long while with admiration. "Lo, thou venerable one," said he then, "what a fine and long hand! That is the hand of one who hath ever dispensed blessings. Now, however, doth it hold fast him whom thou seekest? Me, Zarathustra. It is I, the ungodly Zarathustra, who saith, Who is ungodlier than I, that I may enjoy his teaching?" Thus spake Zarathustra, and penetrated with his glances the thoughts and airier thoughts of the old pope. At the last the latter began.
"He who must love and possess him hath now also lost him most. Lo, I myself am surely the most godless of us at present, but who could rejoice at that?"
"Thou servest him to the last?" asked Zarathustra, thoughtfully, after a deep silence. "Thou knowest how he died? Is it true what they say, that sympathy choked him? That he saw how man hung on the cross, and could not endure it? That his love to man became his hell, and at last his death?" The old pope, however, did not answer, but looked aside timidly, with a painful and gloomy expression. "Let him go," said Zarathustra, after prolonged meditation, still looking the old man straight in the eye. "Let him go. He is gone. And though it honoureth thee that thou speakest only in praise of this dead one, yet thou knowest as well as I who he was, and that he went curious ways."
"To speak before 3 eyes," said the old pope cheerfully.
He was blind of one eye.
"In divine matters I am more enlightened than Zarathustra himself, and may well be so. My love served him long years, my will followed all his will, a good servant, however, knoweth everything, and many a thing even which a master hideth from himself. He was a hidden God, full of secrecy. Verily, he did not come by his son otherwise than by secret ways. At the door of his faith standeth adultery. Whoever extolleth him as a God of love doth not think highly enough of love itself. Did not that God want also to be judged? But the loving one loveth irrespective of reward and requital. When he was young, that God out of the Orient, then was he harsh and revengeful, and built himself a hell for delight of his favourites. At last, however, he became old, and soft, and mellow, and pitiful, more like a grandfather than a father, but most like a tottering old grandmother. There did he sit shriveled in his chimney corner, fretting on account of his weak legs, world-weary, will-weary, and one day he suffocated of his all-too great pity."
"Thou old pope," said here Zarathustra, interposing, "hast thou seen that with thine eyes? It could well have happened in that way, and also otherwise. When gods die, they always die many kinds of death. Well, at all events, one way or other, he is gone. He was counter to the taste of mine ears and eyes, worse than I should not like to say against him. I love everything that looketh bright and speaketh honestly, but he, thou knowest it, forsooth, thou old priest, there was something of thy type in him. The priest type. He was equivocal. He was also indistinct. How he raged at us, this wrath-snorter, because we understood him badly. But why did he not speak more clearly? And if the fault lay in our ears, why did he give us ears that heard him badly? If there was dirt in our ears, well, who put it in them? Too much miscarried with him, this potter who had not learned thoroughly, that he took revenge on his pots and creations, However, because they turned out badly, that was a sin against good taste. There is also good taste in piety. This, at last said, away with such a God. Better to have no God, better to set up destiny on one's own account, better to be a fool, better to be God oneself.
What do I hear?
Said then the old Pope, with intent ears.
O Zarathustra, thou art more pious than thou believest, with such an unbelief. Some God in thee hath converted thee to thine ungodliness. Is it not thy piety itself which no longer letteth thee believe in a God? And thine over-great honesty will yet lead thee even beyond good and evil. Behold, what hath been reserved for thee? Thou hast eyes and hands and mouth which have been predestined for blessing from eternity. One doth not bless with the hand alone. Nigh unto thee, through thou professed to be the ungodliest one, I feel a hale and holy odor of long benedictions. I feel glad and grieved thereby. Let me be thy guest, O Zarathustra, for a single night. Nowhere on earth shall I now feel better than with thee.
Amen. So shall it be, said Zarathustra, with great astonishment. Up thither leadeth the way. There lieth the cave of Zarathustra. Gladly, forsooth, would I conduct thee thither myself, thou venerable one, for I love all pious men. But now a cry of distress calleth me hastily away from thee. In my domain shall no one come to grief. My cave is a good haven, and best of all, would I like to put every sorrowful one again on firm land and firm legs. Who, however, could take thy melancholy off thy shoulders? For that I am too weak. Long, verily, should we have to wait until someone reawoke thy God for thee. For that old God liveth no more. He is indeed dead. Thus spake Zarathustra. 67. The ugliest man. And again did Zarathustra's feet run through mountains and forests, and his eyes sought and sought, but nowhere was he to be seen whom they wanted to see. The sorely distressed sufferer and crier. On the whole way, however, he rejoiced in his heart and was full of gratitude. What good things, said he, hath this day given to me, as amends for its bad beginning. What strange interlocutors have I found. At their words will I now chew a long while, as at good corn. Small shall my teeth grind and crush them until they flow like milk into my soul. When, however, the path again curved round a rock, all at once the landscape changed, and Zarathustra entered into a realm of death. Here bristled aloft black and red cliffs, without any grass, tree, or bird's voice, for it was a valley which all animals avoided, even the beasts of prey, except that a species of ugly, thick, green serpent came here to die when they became old. Therefore the shepherds called this valley Serpent Death. Zarathustra, however, became absorbed in dark recollections, for it seemed to him as if he had once before stood in this valley, and much heaviness settled on his mind, so that he walked slowly and always more slowly, and at last stood still. Then, however, when he opened his eyes, he saw something sitting by the wayside, shaped like a man, and hardly like a man, something nondescript. And all at once there came over Zarathustra a great shame, because he had gazed on such a thing. Blushing up to the very roots of his white hair, he turned aside his glance, and raised his foot, that he might leave this ill-starred place. Then, however, became the dead wilderness vocal, for from the ground a noise welled up, gurgling and rattling, as water gurgleth and rattleth at night through stopped-up water pipes. And at last it turned into human voice and human speech. It sounded thus. Zarathustra, Zarathustra, read my riddle, say, what is the revenge on the witness? I entice thee back. Here is smooth ice. See to it that thy pride doth not here break its legs.
Thou thinkest thyself wise, thou proud Zarathustra. Read then the riddle, thou hard nutcracker, the riddle that I am. Say then, who am I?
When, however, Zarathustra had heard these words, what think ye then took place in his soul? Pity overcame him, and he sat down all at once, like an oak that hath long withstood many tree fellers, heavily, suddenly, to the terror even of those who meant to fell it. But immediately he got up again from the ground, and his countenance became stern. I know thee well, said he, with a brazen voice. Thou art the murderer of God. Let me go. Thou couldst not endure him who beheld thee. Whoever beheld thee through and through, thou ugliest man, thou tookest revenge on this witness. Thus spake Zarathustra, and was about to go, but the nondescript grasped at a corner of his garment, and began anew to gurgle and seek for words.
Stay,
said he at last.
Stay! Do not pass by. I have divined what axe it was that struck thee to the ground. Hail to thee, O Zarathustra, that thou art again upon thy feet. Thou hast divined, I know it well, how the man feeleth who killed him, the murderer of God. Stay! Sit down here beside me. It is not to no purpose. To whom would I go but unto thee? Stay, sit down. Do not, however, look at me. Honor thus mine ugliness. They persecute me. Now art thou my last refuge, not with their hatred, not with their bailiffs. Oh, such persecution would I mock at, and be proud and cheerful. Hath not all successes hitherto been with the well-persecuted ones? And he who persecuteth well learneth readily to be obsequent, when once he is put behind. But it is their pity is it from which I flee away and flee to thee, O Zarathustra. Protect me, thou, my last refuge, thou sole one who divinest me. Thou hast divined how the man feeleth who killed him. Stay! And if thou wilt go, thou impatient one, go not the way that I came. That way is bad. Art thou angry with me because I have already racked language too long? Because I have already counseled thee? But know that it is I, the ugliest man, who have also the largest, heaviest feet. Where I have gone, the way is bad. I tread all paths to death and destruction. But that thou passedst me by in silence, that thou blushest, I saw it well. Thereby did I know thee as Zarathustra. Everyone else would have thrown to me his arms, his pity in look and speech, but for that I am not beggar enough. That didst thou divine. For that I am too rich in what is great, frightful, ugliest, most unutterable. Thy shame, O Zarathustra, honored me. With difficulty did I get out of the crowd of the pitiful, that I might find the only one who at present teacheth that pity is obtrusive. Thyself, O Zarathustra, whether it be the pity of a god, or whether it be human pity, it is offensive to modesty, and unwillingness to help may be nobler than virtue that rusheth to do so. That, however, namely pity, is called virtue itself at present by all petty people. They have no reverence for great misfortune, great ugliness, great failure. Beyond all these do I look, as a dog looketh over backs of thronging flocks of sheep. They are petty, good-walled, good-willed, grey people. As the heron looketh contemptuously at shallow pools, with backward bent head, so do I look at a throng of grey little waves and wills and souls. Too long have we acknowledged them to be right, those petty people, so we have at last given them power as well. And now do they teach that good is only what petty people call good, and truth is at present what the preacher spake who himself sprang from them, that singular saint and advocate of petty people, who testified of himself, I am the truth. That immodest one hath long made the petty people greatly puffed up, he who taught no small error when he taught, I am the truth. Hath an immodest one ever been answered more courteously? Thou, however, O Zarathustra, passest him by, and saidst, Nay, nay, 3 times nay. Thou warnest the first to do so against pity, not everyone, not none, but thyself and thy type. Thou art ashamed of the shame of the great sufferers, and verily, when thou sayest, From pity there cometh a heavy cloud, take heed, ye men. When thou teachest all creators are hard, all great love is beyond their pity, O Zarathustra, how well versed dost thou seem to me in weather signs. Thou thyself, however, warn thyself also against thy pity, for many are on their way to thee, many suffering, doubting, despairing, drowning, freezing ones. I also warn thee, also against myself. Thou hast read my best, my worst riddle, myself, and what I have done. I know the axe that felleth thee. But he had to die. He looked with eyes which beheld everything. He beheld men's depths and dregs, all his hidden ignominy and ugliness. His pity knew no modesty. He crept into my dirtiest corners. This most prying, over-intrusive, over-pitiful one had to die. He ever beheld me. On such a witness I would have revenge, or not live myself. The God who beheld everything, and also man, that God had to die. Man cannot endure. It is that such a witness should live.
Thus spake the ugliest man. Zarathustra, however, got up, and prepared to go on, for he felt frozen to the very bowels. Thou nondescript, said he, thou warnest me against thy path. As thanks for it, I praise mine to thee. Behold, up thither is the cave of Zarathustra. My cave is large and deep, and hath many corners. There findeth he that is most hidden his hiding place, and close beside it there are 100 lurking places and by-places for creeping, fluttering, and hopping creatures. Thou outcast who hast cast thyself out, thou wilt not live amongst men in men's pity? Well then, do like me. Thus wilt thou learn also from me. Only the doer learneth. And talk first and foremost to mine animals, the proudest animal and the wisest animal. They might well be the right counselors for us both. Thus spake Zarathustra, and went his way, more thoughtfully and slowly than ever before, for he asked himself many things, and hardly knew what to answer. How poor indeed is man, thought he in his heart. How ugly, how wheezy, how full of hidden shame. They tell me that man loveth himself. Ah, how great must that self-love be! How much contempt is opposed to it! Even this man hath loved himself, as he hath despised himself. A great lover, methinketh, he is, and a great despiser. No one have I yet found who more thoroughly despised himself. Even that is elevation. Alas, Was this perhaps the higher man whose cry I heard? I love the great despisers. Man is something that hath to be surpassed. 68. The Voluntary Beggar. When Zarathustra had left the ugliest man, he was chilled and felt lonesome, for much coldness and lonesomeness came over his spirit, so that even his limbs became colder thereby. When, however, he wandered on, uphill and down, at times past green meadows, though also sometimes over wild stony couches where formerly, perhaps, an impatient brook had made its bed. Then he turned, all at once, warmer and heartier again. What hath happened unto me? He asked himself. Something warm and living quickeneth me. It must be in the neighborhood. Already am I less alone. Unconscious companions and brethren rove round me. Their warm breath toucheth my soul. When, however, he spied about and sought for the comforters of his lonesomeness, behold, there were kine there standing together on an eminence, whose proximity and smell had warmed his heart. The kine, however, seemed to listen eagerly to a speaker, and took no heed of him who approached. When, however, Zarathustra was quite nigh unto them, then did he hear plainly that a human voice spake in the midst of the kine, and apparently all of them had turned their heads towards the speaker. Then ran Zarathustra up speedily, and drove the animals aside, for he feared that someone had here met with harm, which the pity of the kine would hardly be able to relieve. But in this he was deceived, for behold, there sat a man on the ground, who seemed to be persuading the animals to have no fear of him, a peaceable man, and preacher on the mount, out of whose eyes kindness itself preached. What dost thou seek here? Called out Zarathustra in astonishment. What do I seek? Answered he. The same that thou seekest, thou mischief maker, that is to say, happiness upon earth. To that end, however, I would fain learn of these kine, for I tell thee that I have already talked to half a morning unto them, and just now were they about to give me their answer. Why dost thou disturb them? Except we be converted and become as kine, we shall in no wise enter into the kingdom of heaven, for we ought to learn from them one thing, ruminating. And verily, although a man should gain the whole world and yet not learn one thing, ruminating, what would it profit him? He would not be rid of his affliction, his great affliction. That, however, is at present called disgust, who hath not at present his heart, his mouth, and his eyes full of disgust? Thou also, but behold these kine. Thus spake the preacher on the mount, and turned his own look towards Zarathustra, for hitherto it had rested lovingly on the kine. Then, however, he put on a different expression. Who is it with whom I talk? He exclaimed, frightened, and sprang up from the ground. This is the man without disgust. This is Zarathustra himself, the surmounter of the great disgust. This is the eye. This is the mouth. This is the heart of Zarathustra himself. And whilst he thus spake, he kissed with overflowing eyes the hands of him with whom he spake, and behaved altogether like one whom a precious gift and jewel hath fallen unawares from heaven. The kine, however, gazed at it all and wondered. Speak not of me, thou strange one, thou amiable one, said Zarathustra, and restrained his affection. Speak to me firstly of thyself. Art thou not the voluntary beggar who once cast away great riches, who was ashamed of his riches and of the rich, and fled to the poorest to bestow upon them his abundance and his heart? But they received him not. But they received me not, said the voluntary beggar. Thou knowest it, Forsooth, so I went at last to the animals, and to those kine.
Then learnest thou, interrupted Zarathustra, how much harder it is to give properly than to take properly, and that bestowing well is an art, the last, subtlest master art of kindness.
Especially nowadays, answered the voluntary beggar, at present, that is to say, when everything low hath become rebellious and exclusive and haughty in its manner, in the manner of the populace. For the hour hath come, thou knowest it forsooth, for the great, evil, long, slow mob and slave insurrection. It extendeth and extendeth. Now doth it provoke the lower classes, all benevolence and petty giving, and the over-rich may be on their guard. Whoever at present drip like bulgy bottles out of all too small necks. Of such bottles at present one willingly breaketh their necks. Wanton avidity, bilious envy, careworn revenge, populous pride, all these struck mine eye. It is no longer true that the poor are blessed. The kingdom of heaven, however, is with the kine.
And why is it not with the rich? Asked Zarathustra temptingly, while he kept back the kine which sniffed familiarly at the peaceful one.
Why dost thou tempt me? Answered the other. Thou knowest it thyself better even than I. What was it drove me to the poorest, O Zarathustra? Was it not my disgust at the richest? At the culprits of riches, with cold eyes and rank thoughts, who pick up profit out of all kinds of rubbish? At this rabble that stinketh to heaven? At this gilded, falsified populace, whose fathers were pickpockets, or carrion crows, or rag-pickers, with wives compliant, lewd, and forgetful? For they are all of them not far different from harlots. Populace above, populace below, what are poor and rich at present? That distinction did I unlearn. Then did I flee away, further and ever further, until I came to those kine.
Thus spake the peaceful one, and puffed himself and perspired with his words, so that the kine wondered anew. Zarathustra, however, kept looking into his face with a smile. All the time the man talked so severely, and shook silently his head. Thou dost violence to thyself, thou preacher on the mount, when thou usest such severe words. For such severity neither thy mouth nor thine eye have been given thee, nor methinketh hath thy stomach either. Unto it all such rage and hatred and foaming over is repugnant. Thy stomach wanteth softer things. Thou art not a butcher. Rather seemest thou to me a plant-eater and a root man. Perhaps thou grindest corn. Certainly, however, thou art averse to fleshly joys, and thou lovest honey.
Thou hast divined me well,
answered the voluntary beggar, with lightened heart.
I love honey. I also grind corn, for I have sought out what tasteth sweetly, and maketh pure breath. Also what requireth a long time, a day's work and a mouth's work for gentle idlers and sluggards. Furthest, to be sure, have those kine carried it. They have devised, ruminating, and lying in the sun. They also abstain from all heavy thoughts which inflate the heart.
Well, said Zarathustra, thou shouldest also see mine animals, mine eagle and mine serpent. Their like do not at present exist on earth. Behold, thither leadeth the way to my cave. Be tonight its guest, and talk to mine animals of the happiness of animals. Until I myself come home, for now a cry of distress calleth me hastily away from thee. Also, shouldest thou find new honey with me, ice cold, golden comb honey, eat it. Now, however, take leave at once of thy kine, thou strange one, thou amiable one, though it be hard for thee, for they are the warmest friends and preceptors.
One except whom I hold still dearer, answered the voluntary beggar. Thou thyself art good, O Zarathustra, and better even than a cow.
Away, away with thee, thou evil flatterer,
cried Zarathustra mischievously. "Why dost thou spoil me with such praise and flattery, honey?" "Away, away from me!" cried he once more, and heaved his stick at the fond beggar, who, however, ran nimbly away. 69. The Shadow. Scarcely, however, was the voluntary beggar gone in haste, and Zarathustra again alone, when he heard behind him a new voice which called out, "Stay, Zarathustra. Do wait. It is myself, forsooth, O Zarathustra, myself, thy shadow." But Zarathustra did not wait, for a sudden irritation came over him on account of the crowd and the crowding in his mountains. "Whither hath my lonesomeness gone?" spake he. "It is verily becoming too much for me. These mountains swarm. My kingdom is no longer of this world. I require new mountains. My shadow calleth me? What matter about my shadow? Let it run after me. I run away from it." Thus spake Zarathustra to his heart, and ran away. But the one behind followed after him, so that immediately there were 3 runners, one after the other, namely, foremost the voluntary beggar, then Zarathustra, and thirdly and hindmost his shadow. But not long had they run thus, when Zarathustra became conscious of his folly, and shook off with one jerk all his irritation and detestation. "What?" said he, "have not the most ludicrous things always happened to us old authorities and saints? Verily, my folly hath grown big in the mountains. Now do I hear 6 old fools' lags rattling behind one another. But doth Zarathustra need to be frightened by his shadow? Also, methinketh that after all it hath longer legs than mine." Thus spake Zarathustra, and laughing with eyes and entrails, he stood still and turned round quickly, and behold, he almost thereby threw his shadow and follower to the ground. So closely had the latter followed at his heels, and so weak was he, for when Zarathustra scrutinized him with his glance, he was frightened as by a sudden apparition. So slender, swarthy, hollow, and worn out did this follower appear. "Who art thou?" asked Zarathustra vehemently. "What doest thou here, and why callest thou thyself my shadow? Thou art not pleasing unto me." "Forgive me," answered the shadow, "that it is I, and if I please thee not well, O Zarathustra, therein do I admire thee and thy good taste. A wanderer am I, who have walked long at thy heels, always on the way, but without a goal, also without a home, so that verily I lack little of being the eternally wandering Jew, except that I am not eternal, and not a Jew. What? Must I ever be on the way, whirled by every wind, unsettled, driven about? O earth, thou hast become too round for me. On every surface have I already sat, like tired dust have I fallen asleep on mirrors and window panes. Everything taketh from me, nothing giveth. I become thin. I am almost equal to a shadow. After thee, however, Zarathustra, did I fly, and high longest. And though I hid myself from thee, I was nevertheless thy best shadow. Wherever thou hast sat, there sat I also. With thee have I wandered about in the remotest, coldest worlds, like a phantom that voluntarily haunteth winter, roofs, and snows. With thee have I pushed into all the forbidden, all the worst and the furthest, and if there be anything of virtue in me, it is that I have had no fear of any prohibition. With thee have I broken up whatever my heart revered, all boundary stones and statues have I o'erthrown. The most dangerous wishes did I pursue. Verily, beyond every crime did I once go. With thee did I unlearn the belief in words and worths, and in great names. When the devil casteth his skin, doth not his name also fall away? It is also skin. The devil himself is perhaps skin. Nothing is true, all is permitted, so I say to myself. Into the coldest water did I plunge with head and heart. Ah, how oft did I stand there, naked on that account, like a red crab. Ah, where have gone all my goodness, and all my shame, and all my belief in the good? Ah, where is the lying innocence which I once possessed, the innocence of the good and of their noble lies? Too oft, verily, did I follow close to the heels of truth, then did it kick me on the face. Sometimes I meant to lie, and behold, then only did I hit the truth. Too much hath become clear unto me, now it doth not concern me any more. Nothing liveth any longer that I love. How should I still love myself? To live as I incline, or not to live at all, so do I wish, so wisheth also the holiest. But alas, how have I still inclination? Have I still a goal, a heaven towards which my sail is set? A good wind. Ah, he only who knoweth whither he saileth knoweth what wind is good, and a fair wind for him. What still remaineth to me? A heart weary and flippant, an unstable will, fluttering wings, a broken backbone. This seeking for my home, O Zarathustra, dost thou know that this seeking hath been my home-sickening? It eateth me up. Where is my home? For it do I ask and seek, and have sought, but have not found it. O eternal everywhere, O eternal nowhere, O eternal in vain.
Thus spake the shadow, and Zarathustra's countenance lengthened at his words. Thou art my shadow, said he at last, sadly. Thy danger is not small, thou free spirit and wanderer. Thou hast had a bad day. See that a still worse evening doth not overtake thee. To such